Which one has a higher interest rate, a 30-year mortgage or a 15-year mortgage? If you said the 15-year has a lower mortgage rate, you'd be correct. Taking that same logic, I would say that a 50-year mortgage will more than likely have a higher interest rate.
If any one of my clients came to me and said that they're going to use the 50-year mortgage, I'm not putting my name on that, and I'm walking away from you.
These institutions are literally stealing the American dream right out from underneath the millennials and Gen Zers, and no one seems to be saying anything about it. Owning a house in this country was a staple of the middle class for the past 50 years, and what these institutions are doing is wrong. And if they turn the entire country into a renter's economy and then they control the rent, they're going to keep people spending 30 to 50% of their income on rent, and people are going to be living paycheck to paycheck, and they're going to have all the control.
Everyone's freaking out about the 50-year mortgage that just dropped, but I think it's pretty genius.
Peony, I love and respect your work, but this is a terrible take. Just a little bit. James Bond and Japan. Then we'll have a lightning round. If you were to buy a $400,000 home at a 7% interest rate, you'd be paying $2,660 a month on a 30-year mortgage, not including taxes or insurance. If you were to get the 50-year mortgage, that same exact payment on that same exact home with that same exact interest rate would be $2,380. But there's an issue. You may see that $200 difference as the make or break between you getting a home or not getting a home, but there's a problem. Pop quiz. Which one has a higher interest rate, a 30-year mortgage or a 15-year mortgage? If you said the 15-year has a lower mortgage rate, you'd be correct. Taking that same logic, I would say that a 50-year mortgage will more than likely have a higher interest rate than a 30-year mortgage, mainly because it's a riskier term for the bank to divvy out. So rerunning the numbers, assuming that 50-year mortgage had a 7.5% interest rate on top of it, you're actually only saving about $78 every single mortgage payment. Like I said, just a little bit. In the lightning round, I'll discuss more of the financials around why it's a stupid decision, but let's go to number 2, James Bond. Name is Bond. Well, in this case, it's just Bond. The bond market is what determines rates for you and I. The bond market's not doing too well. Yields go up, and that means rates for you and I go up on mortgages, cars, and credit cards. And here's what nobody's talking about. If we were to create a 50-year mortgage, we would have to create a 50-year mortgage-backed security. We would have to create a 50-year treasury bond. We would have to sell off debt that investors get paid back on in full in 50 years. And the problem with that is right now they're not even buying our 10, 20, or 30% bonds. Those bond market auctions have been awful. Foreign buyers have dried up. So what in God's name is going to make us think that they're going to buy a 50-year bond? You'll buy it? You betcha I will. More than likely, our Federal Reserve in the scenario would have to jump in, quantitative ease, which means digitally create new money, money printing, and buy up our own supply of 50-year bonds. Artificially creating demand for an artificial product to create artificial affordability for you. Also, if we look at QE 1, 3, 4 in 2008, 2014, and 2020, we'll see that the buying up of long-term bonds has always inflated our economy. Number 3, Japan. I'm a history buff, and whenever we talk about the economy, I like to see, has any other country tried this? You'll be surprised at how many economic debates could be settled by just simply going back into the past or looking at how another country currently operates, good or bad. In around 1987, Japan introduced the 3-generation mortgage, the 100-year mortgage. Check it out. They were even writing about it in 1990, pre-bubble pop. See, right here in 1991, we see that home prices, this is home prices in Japan, were on a steady increase until they popped in 1991, leading to what's known today as the lost decades. And some economists would say they're still in the lost decades today in 2025. Now, what happened here? We saw assets begin to go up in price too fast for too long until a pop. Certain banks went insolvent, their stock market plummeted, and home prices plummeted for all Japanese residents. But the problem with that was some of them had 100-year mortgages. A lot had longer-term mortgages. And what this meant was they now were having to pay debt every single month on an asset that was worth nearly half of what they got it for. It was one of the main factors that led to the consumer spending drop that happened throughout the decades. It led to the lost decades and the stagnant growth in the economy of Japan. Just as they were getting on their feet, we came in and jacked them up in 2008, and then of course COVID hit, so Japan just keeps getting punched. Yet Tokyo still looks like this. Someone explain. A 50-year mortgage would be nothing more than a debt servitude mechanism that props up asset prices artificially and gives you the feeling of affordability in a market that you otherwise couldn't afford. Look at the automotive industry since they've introduced 84 and 96-month term loans in a time where people couldn't afford anything. They thought that would fix the problem, and instead they flooded the subprime market. Not a good flood. Quick bonus round, you're not going to be able to refi after 5 to 6 years because you're not going to have enough equity. You're also not going to be able to sell because you're not going to have enough equity. In fact, after 10 years of paying on that 50-year mortgage, you're probably only going to have about $14,000 of equity on a $400,000 home, meaning you do not have enough to pay the fees, commissions, and taxes to sell it, and you're not going to be able to do anything except a streamlined possible loan through the FHA or VA, and that's only if prices were to go up like they did post-COVID again. You're also not going to be able to invest the difference and make anything valuable. Some say, oh, if there's a $200 difference between 30 and the 50, which there's not, it's more like 100, you should just invest the difference in the stock market. After 10 years, you're going to have like 50 grand. How about this? Just live on the street, invest the whole $2,000, and, make it $4,000. The people who need the 50-year mortgage don't have extra money to throw into the stock market. That's not the problem. We need people to have shelter. We're not talking about how to grow your nest egg of wealth investments through asset accumulation. We need people to have a roof. And I'm not saying Theoni was saying any of that. That was just me more venting to a bunch of different creators I've seen. And the last point is on that 50-year mortgage, after 10 years, even if you were to find a way to refi, even if you were putting your money aside and investing, guess what? You've already paid $312,000 in interest to the bank. So what could you have done with that money? Between a 30 and a 50-year mortgage, you'd save some money, but just a little bit. If we were to create a 50-year mortgage, we need a 50-year bond, and the bond market would not respond well. And if we look at other countries and other ways that this has already been operated on, like a 50 and 100-year mortgage already being done in Japan, we could see they're currently not in a great state economically. I would say the 50-year mortgage is nothing more than a bank grift, and if you take on a 50-year mortgage, you're not a homeowner. You are simply renting from the bank, and the bank's not going to replace your dishwasher when it breaks.
And so, guys, all this is a Band-Aid solution. It's not going to fix the overall problem of housing unaffordability in the United States. Going from a 15-year mortgage to a 30-year mortgage, and from a 30-year mortgage to a 50-year mortgage, all you're doing is extending out your debt and the interest payments that you're going to have to make over an extended period of time. People saying that this makes housing more affordable are not factoring in that over the lifetime of you, quote unquote, owning that house, you're going to be paying for that house 2, 3, or 4 times over. It doesn't make any sense. And as the gentleman said inside of the video, you're not factoring into account that the people that are looking for these homes are not looking for a better investment. They're not looking for an asset. They're just looking to have a roof over their head. We know this because if the margin of $200 or $300 or $400 is what makes a home affordable or unaffordable for you, then chances are you're not just looking for a better asset class. Sarah says 50-year mortgage when the average home buyer is in their 40s, you still owe when you die. Meanwhile, the bank has made multiple times the loan and still gets to buy the house after you die. That's a very critical part of this conversation that is not being brought up. This entire home buying situation is a complete scam, considering that after you pass away, they're just going to take the home away from you because they know you still have a bunch of payments to make on the home. Not to mention, the average American doesn't stay inside of a home that long. In fact, I believe it's only a little over a decade. And so when you consider that, 9 times out of 10, you'll be selling at a loss. And when you're talking about paying the realtor, the closing costs, and all of these things that have to be paid for when you are closing on a home. K8 says, I can't believe how many real estate professionals are saying this is a good thing. Asha responds, because real estate agents would sell heroin to a toddler if it was legal. Yeah, I agree. So what's happening is these real estate professionals are incentivized to sell this concept of a 50-year mortgage because they get paid off of selling you a home. So as long as the market seems more affordable and they can get more people in the door, it benefits them even if it puts the buyer at a detriment. Crispy Dies says, a 50-year mortgage is trash because it turns shelter into a lifetime subscription, letting banks skim interest for half a century while you pay roughly 2 houses for one. Stay house poor and roll into retirement still chained to a note. It props up inflated prices, hides the failure to build affordable housing, and dumps risk on regular people who are expected to have perfect health, perfect income, and perfect markets for 5 decades. That is not access. That is extraction, and calling it a solution is unethical. That is a wholesome statement, and everything that is said rings true. When we take a look at this entire process, it is a short-term fix for a long-term problem, and I wouldn't even call it a fix. It's something that is going to be used for the billionaire class, the multimillionaire class, to make money because most of them are invested in these companies that buy all of the homes, which is going to be reserved for later in the video, and are invested into getting Americans wholesale into a greater amount of debt. But let's keep going with the video.
Breaking news. Breaking news. The Trump administration is going to start pressuring these banks to start issuing 50-year mortgages. Because they need to sell some of these damn houses and people can't afford them. In 30 years, these highest interest rates and stuff like that. So Trump is like, well, we're going to issue 50-year mortgages. You can Google this shit. So, I got my good friend over here, Chat GPT, to start running me some numbers. The current interest rates, I think, are like almost 7%. 6 or 7. But I told Chat GPT to run the numbers on $400,000 at 5% interest. ChatGPT spit that shit out in 2 seconds. Guess what your mortgage would be on $400,000 over 50 years at 5%? Your monthly payment is $2,011.78. That's right. That's right. Your total interest now, over the course of that 50-year loan, is $806,768. Now you add that to that $400,000 original loan, that brings that to a little bit over $1.2 million. They have completely lost their motherfucking mind. Because it doesn't even include homeowners insurance. That's just what you got to pay back to the bank. And then your insurance is going to rise every year. Just like mine just did. Mine just went up an extra $150 over the total premium now, not a month. I had to tell them kiss my ass. But anyway, after 50 years, you probably be paying about $7,000 a month for that damn house. These people have lost their damn mind. They are trying to kill every American in the United States. And non-American too. I don't think they give a damn at this point. They're going to kill everybody with financial stress. You won't live past 45. These balls got to stay drained.
That brother made a very valid point. They talking about a 50-year mortgage, but with all that financial stress, you ain't living past 45, player. Chances are you're going to leave that home sooner than later, and you're going to end up selling at a loss. And then even if you quote unquote want to build equity into the home, it's going to take a prolonged period of time to do so because the loans are front loaded. Not to mention, as he said, homeowners insurance, any maintenance costs / fees, any property taxes. Man, please, you'll never pay off that home and it will always be selling at a loss. You're going to be financially burdened for half a century. And that's not even mentioning the fact that homes don't always appreciate in value. Sometimes they depreciate in value. And as the first gentleman said in the initial video, when Japan introduced these 3 generational loans over inside of their society, the bubble popped. And then all of these homes came crashing down. And so now you're paying debt on a home that isn't even appreciating in value. You out of your goddamn mind. Oh, okay, so the lighting is facing this, so it's actually good to do it like this. Joanne says, and even after you pay all that, it's still not yours. Go ahead and miss 2 tax payments after that, and they will auction your house off. We own nothing in the United States. Yes. What she just said is a very big problem in the U.S. Even after you get done paying off your entire mortgage, which, by the way, is not likely to happen, you'll still have to deal with property taxes, in which, if you miss multiple payments consecutively, you can have your house taken away from you. So do we really own anything? Just a thought.
If any one of my clients came to me and said that they're going to use the 50-year mortgage, I'm not putting my name on that, and I'm walking away from you. That is the most, you might as well just throw your money away in that situation. The 10-year difference on that and just interest alone and equity wouldn't add up. Any person that has any basic knowledge, sorry, my freaking seatbelt. Any person that has basic knowledge knows that shit doesn't add up to any person in the world with common sense. The same amount of time in 10 years that you get a property on a 50-year mortgage versus a 30-year, I mean, you're looking at a difference of, having $15,000 versus 40. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, you're this problem that we have here is a lot deeper than the lending. Only people that are smiling and happy at this, that if people bite on it, are the banks, because they're going to make a ridiculous amount of money on people that are not going to have the people in their corner or hired for them to tell them that this is not a good idea. There's nothing about this is good. Nothing about that makes any sense. Nobody can sit there and have a logical conversation with me and say that that makes sense in any way, shape, or form. There's no property on this continent that is worth that. 50-year mortgage? No. God, no. And it's just like, it just gets worse. Like, people just add to the flame of just dumb stuff that we just bring up instead of actually addressing the issues that are plaguing this economy and this market. Like, this is why I'm a big component of putting people that are actually in the field in charge of this stuff. Do not have some person that went to college, never went and did anything in terms of real estate, try to make decisions in this matter. But then again, who am I? We know that the reason why they're bringing this stuff up is just for them to make more money. They know that people have caught on to the idea that they don't want you to own anything. They already understand that. So now they're transitioning to basically predatory lending tactics again to get people to basically willingly give up their freedoms of potentially owning something. Because, it's bad alone that you have to pay off something and then still pay taxes on it. But then to add a 50-year mortgage on top of that, to only take off like, what, $100, $200 from your fucking mortgage? That's stupid. Come on, people. Shut that down right away.
And the people who are going to be most affected by this are those who are desperate, poor, and impoverished and are looking for any way out possible. And those are going to be the people that bite these ridiculous 50-year mortgage prices. On its face, it looks as if you're paying less, but over the long term, you are absolutely paying more. And to the brother's point, the reason why they're not putting people in office to make decisions that will properly affect change inside of the United States for the benefit of the population is because they're looking to make a quick buck, even if it comes to the detriment of the United States economy as a whole. Chances are the banks are just going to get bailed out because they're too big to fail. If you're too big to fail, would that not qualify you as a monopoly? It puts into question whether or not these regulations are really here to be enforced or if they're phony and are just meant to be put down on paper. TikToker says, I disagree with you 100%. Just because it's a 50-year mortgage doesn't mean that you have to spend 50 years paying it off. This would allow people to get their foot in the door and quit renting, all the while they can still pay it off early. What this commenter is not recognizing is the fact that the marginal difference between how much you'll be able to save with a 30-year mortgage versus a 50-year mortgage is not significant enough to make any kind of payment on to the principal. And so that will just result in you paying off a greater amount of debt quicker, which in total will just take a longer period of time. Who are we fooling? Most people are not prioritizing paying off their homes. Most people leave their homes before they could even pay it off now, and that's even with a 30-year mortgage in place, let alone a 50-year mortgage. Andrew says, my thought too. Also, the lower payment allows you to make more payments directly to the principal. Again, like I said before, you will not be making a lot of payments to the principal because most of these loans are front loaded. Nicole says, no. The longer mortgage term for, say, a $400,000 purchase wouldn't give you enough room in the monthly budget to allow an early payoff any more than a 30-year. At a higher interest rate, the monthly savings might net around $100 to $200, and it'll take over 15 years to build enough equity to even afford a refinance if rates drop enough. And you'll be double screwed if home prices go down like we all want, because then you're upside down. So you'll be stuck probably for 20 plus years, and then congrats, you get to pay that mortgage with your Social Security. And this is exactly what And these are the factors that people are not considering when talking about this 50-year mortgage. They're so short-sighted that they can't see the absolute con that is being played on them. Let's continue with the video.
50-year mortgages. That's their solution to the home affordability crisis. I want to be crystal fucking clear about something. I am a mortgage loan originator, mortgage broker, however you want to call it, mortgage banker, whatever colloquially. There's a difference between those things, but for all y'all watching this, it doesn't fucking matter. Whatever term you've heard, I'm that guy. I'm going to make a fucking fortune off of this, which is great for me because over the last few years, when the shit has been fucking terrible for everyone trying to buy a home, it's been awful for me because it's commission only. So once again, crystal fucking clear. I'm going to do well because this is happening, and I don't think this should happen. This is fucking insane. Their solution to the home affordability crisis, as opposed to finding a way to stymie the fucking meteoric rise of home prices, or to cap fucking interest rates on companies like mine, let's fucking face it, instead of doing those things, they're like, oh, well, let's just have all the kids take out more debt over a longer period of time. A 30-year mortgage was already kind of laughable. Like, every time I write one, I talk to the people like, 30 years, they're like, man, you're not going to be in this mortgage for 30 years. You're going to refinance, you're going to sell, you're going to do a bunch of things. But like, 50 actually implies the impossibility of ever actually owning your home. And don't even get me started that if you ever reach that milestone of paying off your home and owning your home, the property taxes are still there and they keep going up and up and up until one day when you reach that milestone, your elderly ass still gets booted out onto the street because you don't own fucking shit. This fucking government and these fucking corporations that own this fucking government have got to be fucking reined in. It's insane. People, do you not see? Fine, fuck it. I'll just make the money if nobody else is going to do anything. Jesus fucking Christ.
And he made an excellent point. Even if you do pay off that home, which, let's face it, you're not going to pay off that home. A 50-year mortgage, given that the average American lives to 78 years old? I am 23 right now. If I got a 50-year mortgage, I wouldn't pay it off until I was 73. 73. Most people are not going to even be able to live until they're able to pay off this home. And let's say they do, the property taxes are still there, and at that point you don't really have a job to help pay off those property taxes, and you'll end up losing the home anyways. So what was the point? And let's get this under wraps. What is the whole big deal with owning a home? Why is that such a huge milestone anyways? Especially when you don't even really own it, considering you're still paying on it even after you pay off the loan. The culture of owning a home and that being some degree of social status really needs to be studied. Specific says, for a $500,000 house at 5% over 50 years versus 30 is only $400 cheaper a month, but $400K more in interest paid. Exactly. You're not getting a more affordable price. All you're getting is a more expensive price spread out over a longer period of time. Tara says, that's not buying, that's renting, but the bank is your landlord and don't fix anything. You damn Skippy. Stubborn Bison says 30-year car loans are next. I wouldn't even be surprised. It's funny, but honestly, I'm being facetious. I wouldn't even be surprised. 30-year car loans would not surprise me because America is all about making money. It's all about putting profit over the people, and really, let's get down to it. In terms of this housing crisis, it's about the private equity firms that are making tons of money, buying up huge plots of land, making all of these houses, pretty much copying and pasting across the entire American society, and then charging a premium for them. All that does is lessen the supply for those individual landlords who could purchase those properties instead and be far more feasible and negotiable with their prices. And so now we have an entire housing market that's less negotiable, more expensive, and is overall all less empathetic to the day-to-day happenings of your average American. An article written by Americans for Financial Reform states, private equity firms have become some of the country's biggest corporate landlords. Americans for Financial Reform estimated that as of June 2022, at a minimum, private equity firms owned real estate rented by about 1.6 million families, including at least 1,071,056 apartment units and 275,468 manufactured home lots and over 239,018 single-family rental homes. And as I've stated earlier in the video, private equity owning all of these properties comes with a plethora of different problems. Americans for Financial Reform also says private equity owners frequently steeply raise rent shortly after purchasing properties. Tenants at private equity-owned single-family rental homes have faced rent hikes much higher than the national average, rising 8% annually during the pandemic compared to the 5.4% national average. Private equity landlords exploit their tenants by imposing an often dizzying array of new fees. These include unavoidable new fees to use mandatory digital rental payment platforms, administration fees, processing fees, fraudulent late fees that quickly pile up, lease termination fees, maintenance fees, and new fees for previously free amenities. Renters often struggle to get their landlords to make needed repairs to their homes, but those renting from private equity seem to face higher hurdles to get needed repairs, even those that pose health and safety risks addressed. So as you can see, politicians are not truthfully addressing the real problem here. Private equity firms are buying up tons of the properties in America and then increasing the rent to make it unaffordable for your typical American. And instead of addressing that issue, what we're seeing is a band-aid solution being offered up and pretending as if it is a long-term fix. It's absolutely preposterous.
There's a report going around showing that roughly 44% of the houses, single-family houses purchased last year, were purchased by private equity firms. And by like 2050 or something like that, they're saying essentially all of the single-family homes are going to be owned by some kind of business. Now, there are a lot of issues with this because it's creating essentially multiple generations of forever renters, but it's also locking people out of the most direct way for them to build generational wealth. I think that it's time for us to implement a policy that removes private industry from personal property ownership. There's no reason why a private equity firm who also owns the banks that are giving them the loans to purchase this property are able to hoard housing, specifically single-family homes. Further, there is no reason why one person should have 10 different LLCs that all own different properties that they're using for things like Airbnb. When we're in the middle of a housing crisis, we literally have a fucking housing crisis and people are hoarding housing because it's profitable. Single-family homes should be owned by families. And the fact that we are allowing industry to hoard a necessary resource during a crisis in that resource is absolutely unacceptable.
Frito says, yes, why does the government regulate everything but not this? The creator replied, because they're in on the same scheme. Their pockets get fat when stocks go up and people suffer. It's extricative politics. I just said extricative politics. Extractive.
Oh.
The hell? The hell? The creator replied, because they're in on the same scheme. Their pockets get fat when stocks go up and people suffer. It's extractive politics. My name is Chicka Chicka. That's a hell of a name. Says, interesting fact. There was a provision in Dodd-Frank passed after the 2008 crash that did regulate this. It was removed in May 2018 by Republicans during the Trump admin. Kafira says, the crony capitalist oligarchy owns the government. They're not going to regulate themselves. And that's a major point to be made. The same people who are introducing these ridiculous 50-year loans and these crazy interest rates are the same people who are backing and lobbying the politicians and are the same people who are not going to then hold those companies accountable because they're getting funded by them. And frankly, if they do something about it, then those companies will no longer finance them for their next term, and chances are they will not be as likely to get reelected. And so it puts the entire system into question. If we're voting and the politicians are only going to do the bidding of the lobbyists anyways, does your vote really matter? Sydney says, because they're making millions off of this. Yep, more of the same. Like I said before, the United States government is run by money. It's not run by morality or the care for the American people.
19,000 homes, not apartments, homes in the metro are owned by 3 companies. That's nearly 1 in every 9 houses up for rent, and some entire suburban neighborhoods where corporations own it all.
The homes that most of these companies are buying are exactly the kind of starter homes that 15, 20, 30 years ago would have been first-time home buyers.
These institutions are literally stealing the American dream right out from underneath the millennials and Gen Zers, and no one seems to be saying anything about it. Owning a house in this country was a staple of the middle class for the past 50 years, and what these institutions are doing is wrong. And if they turn the entire country into a renter's economy and then they control the rent, they're going to keep people spending 30 to 50% of their income on rent, and people are going to be living paycheck to paycheck, and they're going to have all the control. One of the benefits of actually owning a house in this country is that in 15 to 30 years, you have it paid off. There are people who own a $400,000 house today, and their only payment is property tax and homeowner insurance for like $600. It gives you a way to retire in the future with a lower housing burden, and you have some equity in your property that you can pull out and do things with, or just sit on it and be able to will it down to your children. That is the American dream. Why are we letting these companies do this?
Private equity has been so sneaky right under our eyes. We didn't even know what was happening until it was too late. And this is in regards to the housing industry. And I'm not talking about people that can't afford houses now because of private equity. I'm talking about people that can't afford to stay in their houses because of private equity. 2020 really brought a lot of the issues with private equity to light, but they had been operating under the radar for so long before that. And the services that you would need to keep your home going, like general maintenance, roofing, electric, construction, plumbing, HVAC. These private equity companies were coming into neighborhoods and opening these big businesses. Obviously, then you had like your handymen, your neighborhood general contractors, and now you have these new big companies with their pretty trucks and their huge crews, and they get jobs done fast, and they were doing it for a limited amount of money. And they did have good prices, and they did do good work until they didn't have to anymore. They competed with the competition until they literally drove the competition right out of the market. And now that they've completely monopolized areas, they can charge you now whatever they want to. That's exactly what's happening right now. They had super low pricing at first so that you would stop going to the contractors that have been in your area for so long. Those people had to shut down because they could not afford to survive and could not afford to have a business. And now they've closed. So there's no reason for them to compete. So they've jacked up their prices to the point where now you can't afford to put a new roof on your house. You can't afford to service your HVAC, your furnace, put oil in your house if you have oil heat. Appliance repair costs more than buying a new appliance. Home remodels, you can't afford that anymore. But private equity has so much money that they don't care. They exist for the customers that can pay the big bucks, and those customers still do. And you're living paycheck to paycheck, can't afford to get anything done in your house. Now, the worst part is that this gets worse because it was actually the plan all along. Because they didn't really want your business in construction. They want your house. They're banking on making you living in your house so unaffordable that you can't live there anymore. And what they did in 2020 was make sure that all the houses were super cheap so people would snatch those up. And the people who already had houses, they were refinancing because there was so much equity in their houses. And people were like, oh yeah, like mortgage, blah, 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 we can handle it, we can handle the extra money. And now nobody can anymore. Not only can you not afford it, you also can't sell your house because people can't afford houses. So now when you get foreclosed on, your house is going to go to auction. And who's going to buy that? Private equity. And then they're going to turn around and they're going to rent you that house. And then when something goes wrong in the house, they're going to use their own construction companies to fix those things. This is all while paying people the most minimum wage possible and not injecting any money back into these communities because they don't live in the communities. We are so fucked. So I say all that to say this. If you are lucky to still live in an area where there are handymen, where there are general contractors, the people that don't have the fancy trucks, they don't have a big crew, they might take a little bit to get your job done, please choose them. I am the daughter of a family of construction workers. Please choose the little guy, because one day the whole world's going to wake up and realize that there is no more little guy, and we've sold our souls to the big ones. I fear it's already a little bit too late, but if people stop using these big companies, maybe it can change.
And so what that lady just explained is how private equity firms have their fingers in almost every aspect of the home buying and the home maintaining process. Not only are you going to have to go through private equity to get a home, but you're going to have to go through private equity to maintain your home, to pay for new appliances, to remodel your home, and to do anything that is going to help you last that next 50 years. And then at the end, you're not even going to be able to afford it because of the property taxes and all of the maintenance and all of the other fees that are associated with everything. And then they're going to take that home from you, only to repeat the process with somebody else. And so what do you guys think about the video? Today we've talked about how housing is unaffordable. We've talked about these crazy, ridiculous, outrageous 50-year mortgage loans. And now we talked about the root cause of this problem being that private equity firms have bought up many houses wholesale and have increased the prices to such a level that the average person can't afford a home. So let me know down in the comments below. Do you guys agree with my sentiment on this video and how unaffordable housing has become in the United States? Or do you guys disagree and believe that there is another cause to this problem and maybe these politicians could do something to fix it? Thank you for tuning into this video. Like, comment, and subscribe if you would like to see more, and I will see you in the next one.